Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our astrological festival. Today, we have the honor of hosting Diane Booth Gilliam with us, and we are very thankful to her for joining us today. Thank you very much for joining us today, Diane.
Thank you, Anna.
As you may know, she is the founder of Yoga Astrology, and today she will tell us all about that and more. So, Diane, how did your journey start? Because I know personally that you started out with yoga. How did you come about incorporating astrology into it?
Wonderful question. So I will answer your question this way. I'd been practicing yoga and had started teaching yoga after many years of practice and study. And all at one time, one fall, autumn of 1991, I started teaching philosophy at a university. And I started teaching yoga classes after I had many years of practice. And I got married. The marriage is no longer, and my father died, all within a very short frame of time. Yes, I have studied the astrology of that time, but the point here is at that moment in my life, I was working with my mind very strongly with students in the philosophy university classes. And I was working with my body and soul, if you will, in yoga classes, but they were in two different places, right? And it became more and more clear that these are not separate entities. There's an interaction between body and mind. And then I went to a Christmas party. There was a beautiful woman with straight, long black hair, and she had earrings that had little stars. She wore a knee-length dress. I thought she was gorgeous. So I introduced myself and asked her, "What do you do?" She said, "I'm an astrologer." This is all in 1991. So it all started to come together. And since then, so much has unfolded about how the body and the cosmos are intimately interconnected. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So, to go a little bit deeper into what yoga astrology is, well, how would you explain it to somebody who does not have experience in either of those disciplines?
Oh, good question. I'll tell you how I answered it, that question, basically, to a surgeon. I've seen 3 surgeons in the last few weeks. One of them is a female. So she looked at my history, my online questionnaire, and asked me, "What do you teach?" I told her I teach astrology to yoga students. And her eyes lit up and she said, "I can't talk about that around here in her medical world of other physicians and MDs and all of that." She said, "But my father and I were both am still very much into astrology. It has to be all connected, correct?" So I teach yoga teachers how to use astrology. And of course, it doesn't just stay there. It's a huge endeavor and huge process of understanding how indeed the subtle body as well as the physical body is connected with and interacting with, and ultimately one with the celestial bodies. I've said quite a lot there. I hope that made it clear.
Yes, thank you. So, do you think, in order to incorporate um, astrology into your life, do you need like a little bit of knowledge of your body, as in yoga knowledge, or do you need to be a yoga instructor to learn astrology, or do you think you can be passionate and practice yoga to incorporate your method into it?
Oh, good question. You don't even have to know what yoga is to be so passionate about astrology, correct? And vice versa. However, at some point in each of our evolutions, astrology and yoga or wellness, at some point we recognize that there's an intimate interconnection between body, mind, and soul and celestial bodies. So do you need to be a yoga instructor? No, not at all. You don't even have to know much about yoga at all to still delve deeply into yoga astrology. It has been my teachings have been a way for people who are already into yoga to come into astrology, but it's expanded. And as you know, I'm sure, astrology has exploded, as has yoga. So bringing them together is really quite a natural step, or it was for me.
Oh, well, of course. And how would you say, your method of teaching has evolved through the years that you've had your creation, yoga astrology?
Oh, another great question. Thank you for asking me these important questions. How my teaching has evolved is that as humanity becomes more and more attuned to astrology, not that surgeon yet, I mean, not her world, but in general, as the population becomes more and more interested in astrology and knowledgeable about it, at least to some degree, my teaching has had to reach into different categories because I started teaching yoga teachers who had an inkling what astrology was, from the names of the planets to where they're located and in the signs and all of that. They're very rudimentary beginners astrology. And now I've, as we all have, grown in that passion to incorporate more Vedic astrology, more alignment between the body and the planets, more ways to approach wellness using this all-encompassing trait. I'd like to show you something if you're open to that, right? Okay. This is one of many ways that yoga and astrology are connected. In the human body is the spine, and in the spine, that's somewhat known to modern medicine, the gray matter and all of that. But what's less well known is the fact that on either side of your spine and my spine are two nadis, N-A-D-I, energy channels. The spine is one, the Sushumna nadi, and then on either side of your spine and mine are the Ida and Pingala, two sun and moon nadis. So sit down in your chair, settle into your sitting bones, and breathe up your spine, lengthen your spine upward. And as we exhale, let's turn in one direction. Either direction is fine. Breathe in and exhale back to center. Breathe in, elongate your spine. Exhale to the other direction. Breathe in and exhale back to center. What's changed for you?
I certainly feel way more relaxed as it than I was before.
Wonderful. And that has many explanations in terms of the nadis, NADI. But the basic premise here is that every morning and every evening, sunrise and sunset, are sacred times for meditation and practice. And at those times, without us doing a thing, inside the body, the nadis switch to the other side. It's sunrise and it's sunset. So our bodies naturally wake up with the sun and go to sleep with the sun, within a few hours anyway. In an ideal world, that's the situation. And therein lies a secret to how we relax our body before that sacred time of day, sunrise or sunset. Just do yourself a twist. And the nadis, it's kind of not a way to trick the nadis. You can't trick the nadis, but it is a way to activate that sacred relaxation. You can do it anytime. Waiting in your car at a stoplight, breathe in, exhale. So that is along with many other things like squeezing the organs and then releasing, which is what twisting also does. Oh, I could go on and on. I hope that I've responded to what you were curious about.
You certainly did. Thank you. So, what would you say that you're focusing on nowadays? Are you working on anything specific?
Good question. You know, that meeting with the surgeon, well, all three of them, but the one in particular who has a special interest in astrology really piqued my interest. deeply, because that's where I see a great inroad for the upliftment and well-being of humans in general, to see our connection with nature, to see how we fit and know that we belong here and that we are one entity in the biggest sense. I see my particular focus moving more and more into other types of wellness in addition to yoga. Although yoga is not limited to a couple of postures, yoga is enormously encompassing as well. And I see my personal expansion into additional forms or categories of wellness.
Totally. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, with these interviews, we're also trying to understand how far, the work of Italians has gone into the world. Have you ever had the chance to, come by any work done by Italians in any of, the spiritual field?
Oh, I had the pleasure of visiting Assisi a few years ago and being in the temples with a meditation group, a group of people who were meditating. So I believe, I fell in love with Italy. I fell in love with life again, being in Italy. So the depth and timelessness, analogous to astrology, analogous to yoga, the depth and timelessness of what is held within the confines, the borders of Italy. There's no end. It doesn't necessarily expand beyond, it goes deeper, which is always of interest to me. I love Italy. That's why I'm here today.
Thank you. That was great. Um, so, with the rapid evolution of technology and how popular the spiritual sciences and practices have become, what do you think, the future is going to look like for us in terms of how we'll be mindful or how we'll be, you know, touching more on our spiritual side? What do you think it's going to look like for us?
I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that an understanding of a human body's oneness, connection, intimacy with celestial bodies, for instance, of many ways to approach this. Our connection with the celestial bodies and the human body, our own bodies, that depth of understanding and embodiment of the understanding, not just talking about it, but truly living with it, will make us more aware and respectful and addressing climate change, climate crisis, and how to take care of animals, plants, and what else is there? Animals, plants, minerals. I think those are the main categories of, well, all of the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and if you will, ether. How to recognize that when we damage one, we damage the other automatically. And when we heal one, there's a domino effect or a wave going out into the water that touches who knows where does it ever end? When one is healed, others are healed just by brushing up against the energetic connection.
Of course. So, how has yoga changed you personally? I would love to know that.
Are you a yogini?
I'm looking to get into it, mostly, to relieve some stress and see how it evolves for me too.
Wonderful. I know you will. Yeah. How has yoga changed me personally? Just like today, you and I meeting in this way, yoga has opened every door in my life that has opened. And it started on the yoga mat in a yoga class, of course, many, many years ago. But then I went to India, and not that you must go to India, but the roots are there in the ancient practices. And how has it changed me? I know what I value, and I don't waste energy, my energy, channeling my energy into areas that don't hold any great value. I don't want to learn how to be manipulative. I want to learn how to be authentic. And I think yoga is responsible for that.
That's a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
So do you think that I don't know if you've had the chance, to look into it yet, but we know that Pluto is moving very soon into Aquarius. Do you have a vision for how that will affect us or what kind of healing it could bring about for us?
Again, I'm hopeful. And I believe you said Pluto in Aquarius. Yes. Aquarius being associated with humanity as a whole and social interactions and society and the future. Pluto does away with what isn't working. So I'm hopeful that Pluto's transit, first in our lifetime, first time ever, Pluto in Aquarius, is going to bring about transformation, actually force transformation and enforce and support transformation of how society works so that more people can be safe and cared for and healed and well. There's a great movie. May I mention the movie Zone of Interest? And to make a long story short, the director of the film was interviewed saying, he said, we're all like that. We're all interested in our own well-being, as we must be. And yet right on the other side of the wall, so to speak, the divider, maybe we can even think of our skin as that divider: Capricorn skin, Aquarius air. So right on the other side, people are suffering. Animals are suffering. The rivers are polluted. All of that is right over there. And we're here taking care of our little, new dresses. And, and what if we were to recognize ourselves in that scenario? And he was speaking of the movie Zone of Interest, but truly as a way of being, to see our connection.
Yeah. So, do you think that in the future, more people, getting in tune with the energy of the elements could bring us all to more awareness, to being more aware of our problems and therefore being able to come up with solutions for them?
Absolutely. Being more aware of solutions. And you said it yourself. I do believe, and I will stand with this belief, that the solution is awareness. And let me just bring that back to yoga, if you will allow that. When I, as a yoga instructor, invite you to inhale up your spine and lengthen up, do it with me, please. Inhale up and exhale, relax. Let's do it one more time. Inhale up the spine, up through the top of the head. And exhale down into your sitting bones. It's so simple, isn't it? And it's so accessible. So where was I going with that? Oh, as a yoga instructor, I want you to be aware of your spine and your shoulders. But it's not just about your spine and your shoulders. It's about the awareness, the heightened awareness, and how that permeates all of life eventually. Okay, now cross your right foot over your left foot. Yes, it's about your feet and your legs crossing, but it's also, again, about the awareness. And that's the deeper, more powerful, or as powerful part of yoga and astrology and yoga astrology. And thank you for pronouncing it correctly. Yoga astrology, you did it right away. Thank you.
Thank you. I was a bit worried about it. So, talking about, your experience and how you teach yoga, what would you say what does a class typically look like for you? How do you approach it?
Oh, another good question. So I taught yoga classes and workshops and retreats, as most yoga instructors do, follow that trajectory. Classes, workshops, more intensive, retreats, even more intensive. But now, or for many years actually, I've only taught the teachers, and they're out there doing that. So I want to answer your question though. When I teach a yoga class, what did it consist of? First, we settle into the room. We take a few moments just breathing together as you and I just did. And that changes everything right away, right? Just a couple of moments of focus on being present and breathing. And then we'll do a series of asanas, starting with one particular asana or posture, and then do a series in a certain way. And then we'll return to that marker pose, that first asana, and notice what's changed. And certainly something has changed. A lot has changed because of the process of moving the body in certain ways and being aware of the movement. And then we'll lie down in Shavasana, which some students think they should just leave, who has time to lie down, but that is said to be, and I have a tendency to agree, the most difficult asana and the most important asana, Shavasana, or corpse pose or sponge pose, where you lie down flat on your back and close your eyes and allow the benefits of yoga to continue to ripple through your entire body, mind, and soul. Then we sit up and say a greeting of sorts. Namaste has been traditional. I acknowledge the light in you as I acknowledge the light in me. Namaste. And if we're lucky, we have a cup of tea together, and that's that.
Oh,
But I must add, at this point in my life, after decades and decades of doing yoga, I am leaning into being yoga, as opposed to carving out a certain amount of time to do it. I allow it to permeate, invite it to permeate.
that's very interesting. Could you tell us a little more about it? How does that work for you?
Well, again, it's about awareness. So if I find my temper being flaring, if I'm upset about something, or even when I'm elated, like I was so excited to come and meet you today, and you have not disappointed me at all. It's such a pleasure. Um, Being aware in each moment, because so much of life is, okay, I want to get this done so that I can, and I'm guilty of this too, get this done so that I can do that. But then we miss our lives. So even doing that is never enough. I'm going to buy more stuff because then I'm going to be there. But if we just, and I'm not saying I've got this completely mastered. However, I do feel for myself settling into the awareness of the present moment
Of
is the
course.
ticket.
And so, do you think that by teaching, having to explain to somebody else, you yourself have become more like softer, more aware of how your words affect others?
I hope so. I certainly hope so, because I have Mercury conjunct Mars, to tell you the truth. And I won't go into any more detail, but it's definitely a powerful combination. And I continually try to remind myself of how I speak with others and in what tone of voice and what energy I bring to every interaction and every moment. Really, I try for that, and I've made progress.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. You also mentioned that you traveled to India and that, helped you in your path. Would you like to tell us what happened, what transformed you while you were in India?
Oh, you bring tears to my eyes. Thank you for asking that question. One of my early astrologers told me that, I'll just say, certain people in my life don't have the framework to understand. This is what she said. They don't have the framework to understand what happened to you, Diane, in India. They don't have it. And if I demand them to understand it, I will lose them. And so that's probably where the tears welled up. What happened for me in India? There's so many ways we could talk about this. I'd like to add the fact that my most recent of many trips to India was to southern India, where there are planetary temples. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Neither did I. I mean, after all these years I was introduced to the planetary temples. For example, the Saturn temple has rows of metal. You stay on a very narrow path in the Saturn temple, and there was an elephant chained, and I wanted to rescue and set free that particular elephant. And I did sob, sob, sob on the street when we left that temple, the Saturn temple. But here's the contrast. The Jupiter temple was gay and light. There was music playing piped in that was the most uplifting music. I mean, music in India is amazing with all sorts of ramifications, but in that temple, there was this great music piped in, and it was just jovial, is a good way to describe it. And one more of the many temples. Oh, I could go on and on. What would you rather hear, Mars or the moon? Which temple would you like to hear about?
I'd love to hear about the moon.
Oh, the moon. Okay, first of all, when we arrived at the gates, the outer gates of the moon temple, there was a pregnant goat. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, often the moon is associated with women and children and nurturing in the breasts and suckling at the breasts. And so to have a pregnant animal standing there was really quite remarkable. And that's, I think, the best that I can describe for how the moon temple unfolded. Oh, but we did drive through these green, lush fields for hours and hours, it felt like, to get to the moon temple, whereas some of the other temples are just right there in the center of the villages. But the moon temple was off by herself and sweetly glowing.
Of course. So then again, you could say that it all ties back to awareness and how this experience, helped you become even more aware, through the exploration of these different sites.
Yes.
Well,
Yes, I mean, who knew that since time began, people in India have been erecting glorious temples to the planets? I mean, it blew me away, which it shouldn't have, because, I know there's a connection. So anyway, it was just marvelous, a marvelous experience.
well, of course. So, is there any particular message that you would like to leave us with? Anything that's on your mind that you think it is important for us to hear?
Are we closing now? Is this my closing statement that you're asking for?
If you would like it to be yes, or if there's anything you would like to add, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I wish I would have prepared the appropriate closing remark. Although I'll just circle back to where we started today with great respect for your time and commitment to what you're doing and your graciousness.
Oh, thank you.
Mm. We talked about how there's an interconnection between man, woman, child, Pluto, Aquarius, Mars, the sun, the eclipses, and all. And I believe that greater and greater wellness for each individual, as well as for humanity as a whole, and all of life, will be enhanced. Wellness will be enhanced as we become more and more aware of the depth and um, magnificence of these connections.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.